Is Donald Trump's mental illness contagious? Find out next on the Thom Hartmann Program.
Wow. Okay, back in the 1930s, there was this weird guy in Germany who had a little mustache, and he said things like, if you wish the sympathy of the broad masses, you must tell them the crudest and most stupid things. Tell a lie loud enough and long enough, and people will believe it. He says it is a quite special secret pleasure how the people around us fail to realize what's really happening to them. The greater the crime perpetrated by the leadership, the less likely it is that the people will ever believe their leaders to be capable of perpetrating such event. And, and this is the final one. I wanted to get to the science behind this. The receptivity of the masses is very limited. Their intelligence is small, but their power of forgetting is enormous. In consequence of these facts, all effective propaganda must be limited to a very few points and must harp on these in slogans until the last member of the public understands what you want him to understand by your slogan. Now, he was not unique in saying these things. Niccolo Machiavelli laid out basically the same stuff. We've seen this over and over with a number of people throughout the years in various countries and in some ways here in the United States. But I wanted to dig into the science of this sort of rhetoric and where we go with this. On the line with us is Dr. Bandy Lee, the assistant clinical professor at the Yale School of Medicine, a forensic psychiatrist at the Yale University Medical School, co-founder of the World Mental Health Coalition, editor of a new book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 27 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess the president. The website for that book is dangerouscase.org. And Dr. Bandy Lee's Twitter handle is BandyXLee1. And Dr. Lee, welcome back to the program. It's been a while. I'm curious your thoughts on the Republican convention and Donald Trump going now to Wisconsin over the objections of the governor and the mayor, and how this all fits into one coherent way of essentially communicating a particular political philosophy to people.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here. The Republican National Convention was quite spectacular, and it was most notable to me in terms of the visuals, the sounds, and the presentation. And it was very carefully thought through, coordinated, and orchestrated. And it was very clear that that there was a certain kind of psychological shaping of those who would view it was in mind. The Republican Party in general is far more sophisticated in this way than the Democrats are, and it certainly played out during the convention. What I thought about in terms of the dangers of this is the very nomination of someone in the first place, someone who has actually, among us mental health professionals, we actually have done a full standardized mental capacity evaluation, and quite astonishingly, he failed every criterion. That means that there's almost no chance for his fitness for virtually any job. So you take someone who is incapable of almost any job, and certainly of the presidency of the United States, and charging him with trying to reobtain the highest office in the land. This is a very dangerous arrangement. So first of all, I'd like to frame it in those terms. You were speaking of his going to Wisconsin?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. I think it's important to note that the violence in the streets is certainly not coming from protesters, and not even entirely from police officers instigating it, but from the mind of the person in the Oval Office himself. And this kind of influence on violence is actually far more pervasive than the most overt kinds of violence. In fact, I've studied this my entire career. My area of expertise is in violence prevention. And we find that the more hidden forms of violence are actually the deadliest. and the most worrisome. And so one person hitting another is not as dangerous as someone of greater influence stoking violence, inciting it, and then creating a culture of violence, I would say, is the most dangerous kind of all. And so many people in Kenosha have expressed that they do not want the president there, and I would agree with that he will be fueling the divisions and creating greater danger.
Dr. Lee, when a leader speaking the way that Donald Trump is right now, essentially tearing society apart, pitting people against each other, and using multiple opportunities to do it. I mean, Trump is tearing people apart with regard to masks, as well as with regard to guns and protest and everything else. When such leaders have emerged, in whether it was Pinochet in Chile or whether it was Hitler in Germany, the more obvious example, I suppose, Mussolini in Italy, Franco in Spain. Now in the modern day, we're seeing this with Modi in India, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Duda in Poland. The list goes on and on. In almost every case, it seems that they actually succeeded in tearing people apart and pitting people against each other in their countries so effectively that they were able to walk into the gap that was, of governance that was essentially created by the chaos and the hate and the anger. How best should a people and a political party or politician, I'm thinking obviously the Democrats and Joe Biden, respond to this?
Well, it's very difficult if you do not bring mental health into the picture. When we have a serious situation like this, and I have emphasized that we're not talking about clinical psychiatry or mental health here, we're talking about public mental health. And that is a little different. So we're not treating the president, we're not diagnosing him. We are responding to our public health duty, our responsibility to society, which we have equally as we do to patients. And and the evaluations that are important to this are dangerousness and unfitness. And we have done those evaluations very rigorously with the highest quality data. They do not require personal examination. So understanding
Dr. Lee, forgive the interruption.
Yes.
We just have 30 seconds till we're going to hit a hard break here.
Oh, okay.
Is Donald Trump's mental illness contagious? It seems like it.
Yes.
How?
In fact, it's a very astute observation because many of us in our individual-oriented society like to think that we have full control of our minds. But in fact, mental symptoms can be more contagious than other forms of infectious disease, such as coronavirus or Ebola, because you do not require physical contact or exposure. You only require emotional bonds. And this is the natural, expected result of having a severely mentally impaired person in an influential position such as president.